Okay, let's dive in. You ever finish a negotiation? Maybe you're haggling over a price somewhere, or I don't know, even just figuring out chores at home,
Oh, yeah.
and you just feel drained, even if you kind of got what you wanted.
Totally wrung out.
Exactly. That story right at the start of getting to, yes, the one about selling the antique,
Hmm.
it just nails that feeling, doesn't it? That exhausting back and forth.
It really does. And what's striking is how common that is. Whether it's, small stuff or big deals, that struggle often comes down to what the authors Fisher, Erie, and Patton call positional bargaining.
Positional bargaining.
Right. We sort of fixate on our position, what we say we want, and then it just becomes this battle of wills. We often miss what's really driving us, what we actually need underneath.
Yeah, and that's really the core of what we're digging into today, isn't it? We're exploring these foundational ideas from getting to yes, negotiating agreement without giving in.
A classic.
Absolutely. And look, I know some people hear negotiation and think, oh, that's for like high stakes business deals.
Right? Boardrooms and stuff.
But that's not it at all. These are really practical tools you can use every single day. I mean, think about it. Anytime you disagree with someone, you're basically negotiating.
You really are.
And this book offers a path away from that adversarial win you lose stuff towards something more collaborative, negotiating without just caving in.
And it really did change the game. The book talks about this negotiation revolution.
Yeah.
It shifted the view from negotiation being some innate talent you either have or you don't,
Right.
to seeing it as a skill, something you can actually learn and get better at.
Mm.
And now, knowing how to do this effectively, it's seen as a core competence, really, in so many areas of life.
Which is why we're doing this deep dive. For you listening, we know you want to grasp these important ideas, get the actionable stuff without getting lost in academic theory.
Get right to the good stuff.
Exactly. So, our mission today is pretty clear. Equip you with practical strategies from getting to yes, so you can reach agreements that work, whether it's a big deal or a small chat, and hopefully with, a lot less stress.
Sounds good.
We'll break down the big ideas, use some of their examples, and focus on how you can actually use this stuff.
Okay, so let's start with the problem itself. Positional bargaining. We touched on it, but what is it really?
It's basically digging your heels in, right? You state your price or your demand or whatever,
Yep, I want X.
and the other person says, well, I'll only give you Y. And then it's just this slow, painful haggle back and forth. Like
Right.
that antique example again, seller starts high, buyer low.
And they kind of inch towards maybe meeting somewhere in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe not.
Or maybe not. The book gives that really powerful example of the U.S.-Soviet nuclear test ban talks.
Oh, yeah, the instructions.
Right. They got completely stuck on the number of inspections. The Soviets said 3. The U.S. insisted on 10.
Just fixated on the number.
Totally fixated. And because they were locked into those positions, they never really got to the interests underneath. Like what kind of inspections, what were they actually trying to achieve with them, what level of assurance did each side need?
And that illustrates the danger perfectly. Positional bargaining, like the book says, often leads to, well, frankly, lousy agreements
Or no agreement at all.
or no agreement, because it stops being about solving the shared problem. It becomes a contest. Who's tougher? Who can stare the other down?
And they mention how the hard bargainers often just dominate the soft ones. The person trying to be reasonable gets walked all over.
Yeah, the soft bargainer often feels, exploited afterwards. It's not sustainable.
Okay, so that's the pitfall. What's the alternative they propose?
Yeah, this is where they introduce their core concept,
Hmm.
principled negotiation, sometimes called negotiation on the merits.
Principled negotiation. Okay.
And it's built on 4 key principles. It's a framework, really, for shifting the whole dynamic.
4 principles. Let's unpack those. What's the first one?
The first one is absolutely crucial,
Yeah.
and maybe sometimes the hardest. Separate the people from the problem.
Separate the people.
Yeah. The idea is that negotiators are people first. We have emotions, egos, different backgrounds, communication issues.
Right, it gets messy.
It gets messy. And often the conflict isn't just about the objective facts of the situation. It's tangled up in the people stuff. Like they say, the conflict lies not in objective reality, but in people's heads. It's about perception.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just the what, it's the who and the how. That landlord-tenant example they use.
Yeah, that's a good one.
The tenant sees the rent as too high because the place needs repairs. The landlord sees it as fair because they haven't raised it in ages. Same apartment, same rent check, but totally different perspectives based on their own situation.
Exactly. And the book's point is, you don't have to agree with the other side's perception. but you absolutely have to understand it if you want to solve the problem effectively.
How do you do that, though? Just
Yep.
guess.
No, they give advice. They say, don't assume their intentions based on your fears. That's a big one.
Ooh, yeah, we do that.
We all do. Instead, try to talk explicitly about each other's perceptions. Put them on the table. Help me understand why you see it that way.
Okay, make it part of the conversation.
Make it part of the conversation. And they also suggest look for chances to act in ways that contradict their potentially negative perceptions of you.
Like the Sadat example, going to Jerusalem.
Exactly. That was huge.
Yeah.
For Israelis, Sadat was the enemy. Him physically going there.
Yeah.
It shattered perceptions. It opened up possibilities that just weren't there before because it showed a willingness to engage differently.
Wow. Okay. What else on the people front?
Another key piece of advice is involve them in the process, early and often.
Why is that so important?
Because people are much more likely to buy into a solution if they feel like they had a hand in creating it. Even small things like asking for their input, giving them credit for an idea, it builds ownership.
Makes them feel invested.
Exactly. As the book puts it, in a sense, the process is the product. How you get there matters as much as where you end up.
Got it. Okay, principle number 1, separate the people from the problem. What's number 2?
Number 2 is focus on interests, not positions.
Okay, interests versus positions. We touched on this with the test ban example.
Right. A position is what you say you want. The interest is the underlying why. The need, the desire, the concern, the fear that motivates that position.
Give me another example.
The book uses that simple, elegant library example. 2 people arguing. One wants the window open, the other wants it closed.
Opposing positions can't both have it.
Seems like
Yeah.
it, right? But if you ask why, maybe one person needs fresh air, feels stuffy. The other is getting a draft, feels cold.
Ah, okay. Different underlying interests.
Exactly. And once you know the interest need for air, avoidance of draft, you can get creative. Maybe open a different window, open the current window just a crack. Suddenly, solutions appear that satisfy both interests.
That's clever, and it applies to bigger things too.
Absolutely. Think about the Egypt-Israel negotiation over the Sinai Peninsula after the 1973 war.
Great, that was in the book too.
Israel's position was, we need to keep some of the Sinai for security. Egypt's position was, we want all of the Sinai back, it's our sovereign territory. Diametrically opposed positions again.
Seems impossible.
But when they focused on the underlying interests, Israel's genuine need for security guarantees, Egypt's profound need for sovereignty, they found a solution.
Which was?
Returning the Sinai to Egypt, but creating large demilitarized zones to address Israel's security concerns. It met both core interests, even though the initial positions seemed irreconcilable.
Okay, so uncovering those interests is key. How do we actually do that in a negotiation?
The simplest, most powerful tool the book suggests is just asking why.
Just keep asking more.
Gently, persistently. When someone states a position, ask, why is that important to you? Or what concern does that address for you? Dig underneath the what to get to the why.
Makes sense.
They also suggest asking, why not? When you propose something, why wouldn't that work for you? It helps you understand their perspective, their constraints, their interests you might be overlooking.
And often there's more common ground than you think.
Way more. We tend to assume that if our positions conflict, our interest must conflict too. But getting to yes argues that behind opposed positions, there are usually many more shared and compatible interests than conflicting ones. Finding those is powerful.
So maybe list them out. Your interests, what you think theirs might be.
Yeah, making lists can really help clarify things. Be concrete about your interests, explain why they're legitimate, but stay flexible on the positions or solutions that could meet those interests.
Okay, principle 3.
Principle 3 flows right from understanding interests. Invent options for mutual gain.
Okay, inventing options. This sounds like brainstorming.
It is, essentially. The book points out a major barrier here is the assumption of a fixed pie.
Meaning like there's only so much to go around, and if you get more, I must get less.
Exactly. That's zero-sum thinking. It stifles creativity because you're just focused on dividing up the existing pie, not on maybe baking a bigger pie together.
Oh, I like that. Digging a bigger pie.
So they identify obstacles to inventing options, things like judging ideas too quickly,
Oh yeah, shooting things down.
searching for that single right answer instead of exploring possibilities, assuming that fixed pie. And interestingly, thinking solving their problem is their problem.
Ah, not seeing it as a shared challenge.
Right. So how do you overcome that? Brainstorming is key. But effective brainstorming has some guidelines.
Like what?
Define the purpose clearly first. Maybe bring in different kinds of people. Change the environment. Make it informal. And the absolute golden rule: invent first, evaluate later. No criticism allowed during the idea generation phase.
Just get stuff out there. Wild ideas welcome.
Absolutely. Quantity breeds quality sometimes. Then, after you have a list, you start sorting, refining, evaluating.
Can you do this with the other side?
Yes. Joint brainstorming can be incredibly powerful. It builds rapport, helps you understand their thinking, and you might co-create solutions neither side would have thought of alone.
So focus on shared interests. Look for ways interests might differ, but be compatible. Like maybe one side values something now, the other values it later.
Exactly. Dovetailing differing interests, different beliefs about the future, different tolerances for risk, different time preferences. These differences can actually be resources for creating value.
Okay, interesting. So invent options for mutual gain. What's the fourth principle?
The fourth one is crucial for making sure the agreement is fair and sustainable. Insist on using objective criteria,
Objective criteria,
meaning basing the agreement not on who can push harder or who's more stubborn, but on some external fair standard, something independent of the sheer willpower of either side.
like what kind of standards?
Could be lots of things: market value, precedent, scientific judgment, professional standards, efficiency, costs, what a court might decide, moral standards, equal treatment.
So if we're negotiating my salary,
Instead of just, I want X and we offer Y, you could look at industry salary surveys for similar roles, company pay scales, maybe data on cost of living adjustments.
right, something external you can both point to.
Exactly. The key is that the criteria should be legitimate, seen as fair by both sides, and practical, meaning they actually apply to the situation.
How do you bring this up in a negotiation?
Frame it as a joint search. How can we figure out what a fair price salary solution would be here? What standards could we look at? Reason with them. Be open to their reasoning about which criteria apply.
And don't just cave to pressure.
Never yield to pressure, only to principle. That's a core message. If they offer a standard, be open to it. If they just push back by asking for the principle behind their position.
Like that insurance adjuster story.
A perfect example.
Yeah.
Tom didn't just accept the lowball offer. He researched the replacement value of comparable cars' objective criteria and kept bringing the discussion back to that, eventually reaching a fair settlement based on those standards.
Okay, those are the four main principles, but the book covers more, right? Like, what if you can't reach an agreement?
Ah, yes. This brings us to a really critical concept. BATNA.
BATNA.
Acronym. It is. Stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement.
Best alternative. Okay, what does that mean practically?
It's not your bottom line, like the absolute minimum you'd accept. It's about knowing realistically what you will do if this particular negotiation fails. What's your best course of action outside of this deal?
So before you even go in, you figure out your plan B.
Exactly. And not just figure it out, but ideally, develop it, identify your alternatives if no deal is reached, try to improve those alternatives, make them stronger, and then choose the best one. That's your BATNA.
Why is that so important?
Because your power in a negotiation often comes directly from how good your BATNA is. If you have a great alternative, you're not desperate to make this deal work at any cost. You can walk away if the terms aren't good enough.
Gives you confidence, leverage.
Absolutely. It protects you from accepting a bad agreement out of fear or desperation. And it helps you assess their likely BETNA too.
Like that tourist buying the pot in Mumbai.
Yeah, his money didn't give him power. Knowing the price of similar pots in the next shop, his BAPNA that gave him power.
And the town negotiating with the factory.
Same idea. The town's BTNA, the possibility of annexing the factory land and imposing its own rules, gave it leverage against a much larger entity. A strong BTNA can really level the playing field.
So knowing your BTNA is key. What if the other side plays hardball, though, uses tactics?
Right, the book calls this negotiation jujitsu.
Like the martial art, using their force against them.
Kind of. The idea is not to meet force with force, not to push back directly against their position because that just leads to deadlock. Instead, you try to sidestep their attack and deflect their energy towards solving the problem.
How does that work in practice?
So if they stay to hard position, don't attack it. Look behind it. Ask why. Try to understand the interests motivating it. Treat their position as just one possible option and explore others.
And if they attack your ideas,
Don't defend them rigidly. Invite criticism. Ask what concerns you about that proposal, or how would you improve it? Turn it into a chance to understand their perspective better.
what about personal attacks? You're being unreasonable.
Recast it as an attack on the problem. It sounds like you feel this situation is unfair. Let's look at the objective standards again. Shift the focus off the people and back onto the substance.
And asking questions. And silence.
Very powerful tools. Asking questions puts the ball in their court, and pausing, using silence after they speak or after you ask a question, gives them space to reflect, maybe reconsider, or elaborate. It's often more effective than arguing.
That's counterintuitive, but makes sense.
They also mentioned the one-text procedure. What's that?
Ah, yeah, that's a useful technique, especially in multi-party negotiations or complex situations. Think Camp David Accords.
Okay.
The basic idea is that a third party, or even one side acting as a mediator, prepares a single draft agreement, just one text.
Not each side bringing their own draft.
No, everyone then critiques that single text. What do you like? What needs changing? How could this be improved? The mediator takes the feedback, revises the text, and brings it back.
And you keep iterating.
You keep iterating that process until the mediator feels they can't improve it further. Then it's basically a yes or no decision for the parties. It simplifies things, forces people to focus on improvements rather than just defending their own initial drafts. Clever. Okay, but what about, well, dirty tricks? When people aren't negotiating in good faith.
Yeah, the book tackles that head on. They acknowledge that sometimes negotiators use unethical tactics.
Like what?
They group them into categories like deliberate deception using phony facts, claiming they have less authority than they do, misrepresenting intentions. Psychological warfare, creating stressful environments, personal attacks, the whole good guy, bad guy routine, making threats.
Yeah, seen that movie.
And positional pressure tactics, refusing to negotiate, making extreme demands, escalating demands, lock-in tactics, my hands are tied. The hard-hearted partner, I agree, but my boss won't. Calculated delays, take it or leave it offers.
Okay, so what do you do? Just walk away. Call them out.
The overarching advice is recognize the tactic, raise it explicitly, and question its legitimacy. Basically, negotiate about the negotiation rules.
So, meta-negotiation.
Kind of. You can say things like, is using pressure really the best way to find a solution here? Or, let's make sure we're both working with accurate information. You bring the tactic itself into the open.
And rely on the main principles.
Absolutely. Separate the people, the tactic user, from the problem, the substance. Focus on interests. Why are they using this tactic? Invent options. How else can we proceed? Insist on objective criteria. Let basis on fairness, not tricks. Don't be a victim.
That seems like a solid approach. Okay, as we start to wrap up this deep dive on getting to yes, what are the absolute core takeaways people should hold on to?
I think it boils down to those four main principles. 1, separate the people from the problem, deal with emotions and perceptions directly.
Right.
2, focus on interests, not positions. Understand the underlying needs and desires.
Why?
The why. 3, invent options for mutual gain, brainstorm creatively. Look for ways to expand the pie.
Bake a bigger pie.
Bake a bigger pie. And 4, insist on using objective criteria base the agreement on fair, independent standards.
And don't forget.
And crucially, always know and try to improve your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. That's your safety net and your source of power.
So for listeners, what's a concrete next step? How can they start applying this?
Take a negotiation you're in right now, or one you see coming up, even a small one. First, just identify the positions, what everyone is saying they want.
Okay.
Then really push yourself to think about the underlying interests. What are the needs, concerns, fears driving those positions? For everyone involved, including yourself.
Dig deeper.
Dig deeper. Then try brainstorming. Just list out, even on your own, some potential options, maybe even silly ones that could potentially meet some of those interests.
Get the creative juices flowing.
Exactly. And think about what objective standards might apply. Could market value, precedent, or simple fairness principles be relevant? And finally, spend some real time thinking about your BATNA. What will you do if no agreement is reached?
That feels really practical. Identify positions, uncover interests, brainstorm options, find criteria, know your BATNA.
That's the essence of it.
You know, the really powerful message I take from getting to yes is this sense of possibility.
Mm-hmm.
That you don't have to choose between being a pushover and being a jerk.
Right. It's not either. Get what you deserve and be decent.
Yeah. There's a better way to handle disagreements that leads to wiser solutions and, importantly, doesn't destroy relationships in the process, maybe even strengthens them.
Definitely.
We should probably leave listeners with that final thought from the book. It's quite poetic. After the final no, there comes a yes.
And on that yes, the future world depends. It encourages a kind of hopeful, proactive stance towards finding agreement.
It really does. And hey, if folks want to go even deeper after this.
Oh, absolutely. Fisher and his colleagues wrote other great books building on these ideas, getting past no, for dealing with difficult people, difficult conversations, beyond reason about emotions, the power of a positive no, lots more to explore.
Fantastic. Well, this has been a great exploration. Hopefully, everyone feels a bit more equipped to get to yes more effectively.
Hope so. It's a skill worth building.